Welcome to The Writer's Dream. This is a show where authors can talk about how they write their books, how they publish their books, and how they market their books. You can find us on YouTube. Just look for my picture and search my name, Linda Maria Frank. I'm the author of Annie Tillery Mysteries. Click on my picture and our interviews will come up. There are about 200 of them now, all local authors. If you're interested in writing tips, marketing tips, publishing tips, and just interested in good books from local talent, please tune into the show. We're also on Cablevision on Thursday afternoon, channel 20 at 2:30. We have a Facebook page called The Writer's Dream, and if you want to message me, you can do it through the Facebook page. Today's guest is Lois Schmitt. Lois Schmitt has been on our show before. Lois is a teacher. She is a writer of serious stuff, and now she has come up with a series of books based on animals. We have Monkey Business, Something Fishy, and Playing Possum. Playing Possum is the book she would like to talk about today. So, what would you like to say about yourself, Lois, before you get started?
Well, I originally came from Brooklyn, went to Grover Cleveland High School. And then I went to Hofstra University, and I've been out on Long Island ever since, which is a long time. Basically, I've always loved mysteries, and I've always loved animals. So as I'll talk about a little bit later on, probably it's inevitable that my mysteries would center around animals. I guess I have a very, very large dog. I have a Bernese Mountain Dog, Sherman. He's about 100 pounds now, but he's still a puppy. He's only 2 months. So I love to travel. And although my mysteries all do take place at this point on Long Island. So when readers look at them, they may find spots that they recognize.
Okay, so tell us about Playing Possum. Give us a little bit about plot, character, and setting.
Okay, well, Playing Possum takes place at a wildlife refuge. My main character, who's in all my books, her name is Christy Farrow, and she's a former English teacher. She enjoyed teaching, but her lifelong dream was always to become a journalist. So she gave up her tenured teaching job to take a job as a reporter for a wildlife magazine. So that's why my books are always at settings involving wildlife, zoos, aquariums, in this case, in Playing Possum, a wildlife refuge. And it starts off, she's investigating some missing animals. The wildlife refuge has a rehabilitation center in conjunction with the refuge itself, and she goes there to find out about the animals that are missing from the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. A group one night suddenly disappeared. There's a hawk, a muskrat, several other animals that were just gone from the rehabilitation center. So that starts her off. Well, pretty soon she comes across a body. So that's as much as I want to say about that right now, but that's the premise of the story. So there's a lot of animals in it, animal crimes, as well as murder and mayhem.
Now, where is this wildlife refuge?
It's on Long Island. It's fictitious. I mean, there are wildlife refuges on Long Island, but this one is basically set eastern Long Island.
I think I know where it is. Yeah. And they take what, animals from zoos or?
The refuge is different than a sanctuary. The book, it's funny you should say that, because the book I'm currently working on is going to take place in a sanctuary. A sanctuary takes animals from roadside zoos, from circuses, people who take a wolf as a pet and decide they don't want it as a pet anymore, things like that. A wildlife refuge is land for the animals because our habitat is being used up. It's being developed for condos, for shopping centers. So there are federal and state wildlife refuges that are set up that are just to keep in their natural state. People can go there. They often can go and take walks, see it, but it's free for the animals. And of course, no hunting or trapping, anything like that is allowed. It's where the animals that are native to that area, deer, possum, raccoons on Long Island, birds can live.
Yeah,
And
there's a
many of them
bit,
do have a rehabilitation center because there's a lot of wildlife that gets injured, and a lot of it is caused by humans. They swallow the pop top, or they get the pop top of a soda can around their beak. Can't open it.
yes,
They
yeah.
get caught in electrical wires. They get hit by cars, things like that. So and some of it is natural. They will fall out of a tree, but that's what the rehabilitation center rehabilitates them, gets them back. If they need veterinary service, they go to a vet, and then they go back to care at the rehabilitation center, and hopefully they can be released in the wild. Many of them can, some can't, some have to stay, and then they may go to a sanctuary or a zoo for educational purposes if they can't get released back because their injuries are too severe.
Now, what kind of wildlife crimes are there? I don't think many people really
It,
understand what a wildlife crime
it
is.
is a fertile field for crime, and that's one of the and you're right, most people don't. There's not a lot written about it in terms of stories. Um, but if you go into the news, there's a lot. Number one, there's smuggling of animal parts. For example, a rhino horn. The powder from a rhino horn is considered an aphrodisiac in some countries. So a 6-pound horn can sell for over $40,000. Alligator skin shoes, ivory artifacts, even, and this sounds bizarre, but there are people who even like to have a candy dish made from a gorilla hand. So there are all sorts of products from endangered species. There's also the sale of exotic animals themselves, a rare parrot, a Komodo dragon. There are people who want to have these animals as pets or for display. So that is big business too. But there's even more. There's the smuggling of other products through the animals, drugs, jewels, and they use anything from puppies to snakes. Not too long ago, there was a real case, where cocaine packets were found inside a shipment of legal boa constrictors. The shipment was to an animal dealer. It was perfectly legal. They weren't endangered. That shipment was legal. But what was going on is they had been stuffed through the rectum with cocaine, and there's more than people realize going on with that type of smuggling. Then there's also another crime against animals. I don't even know if we'd call it a crime, but there is the use of their habitat to build for developments, for housing, for condos, for shopping centers. And that itself is not a crime, but sometimes the dealings that go on. And that's what my second book, Something Fishy, looks at. It's a battle between a developer who wants prime beachfront property that an aquarium also wants to get for to keep it in natural state and do marine mammal research on it. So there's a lot of animal crimes going up there. So that's what.
I don't even think that people realize that if you hit a dog or a cat, you hit an animal with your car, that if you leave the animal, you don't report it, you leave the animal on the road, that's if somebody gets your license plate, that's a crime as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a big fine. I don't think you go to jail, but I believe there's a fine involved in it.
Yeah.
So I have a story, something that happened recently. I was doing a book event at a school, and the author next to me had a book about how trash impacts on animal life, and see some of the stuff you talked about, seagulls and whatnot. So along comes one of the PTA ladies from the school, and she ties a Mylar balloon to her table. And I just looked at the author and I said, I guess she doesn't get it, because Mylar balloons are really
yes,
danger to especially marine life. They see the shiny thing, they think it's a fish, and they,
And they grab it. I mean, there's a lot. If you go to any wildlife rehabilitation center, you'll find that most of the animals that are there because of an injury they suffered because of something a human did.
Mhm.
Mylar balloons, fishing hooks, as they said, the pop tarts on the cut, straws, um, being hit by cars, things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of hazards, and playing possum does look at that. In addition to having a good old-fashioned murder mystery.
So you also publish with a small publisher, yes? A small
Yes, I
press?
do. In Circle,
And
they're a wonderful publisher. I'm very happy with them. In Circle Publications.
and you have a website. What's your website?
My website is just basically my name, loisschmitt.com. So
And
www.loisschmitt.com, and it tells you about my books, tells a little bit about me, and it
you're
tells
on
you where you can get my
Amazon?
books. I'm on Amazon, barnesandnobles.com. Yes, so and also in Circle. You can get the books any of those ways.
Right. Okay. So you have a Facebook page?
Yes, I do. I
Okay.
do.
And what do you think is the most effective way of your marketing? Is it
Yeah,
interview?
that's an interesting question because I'm really not sure. You know, when you go to a speaking engagement and you bring your books, you know what you sell.
Mhm.
So I can basically tell you, do I sell more at a Rotary Club or at a women's club or on the North Shore of Long Island or in the South Shore of Long Island? You can tell that on speaking engagements. But with social media, it's a little more difficult because you don't know necessarily if you're doing two things at the same time or within close proximity, which is the most effective. For instance, if I do an interview on YouTube or on the radio or something, and I also later that month decide to boost some Facebook ads, some Facebook pages,
Mhm.
what is selling the books? If I get an increase in book
Right.
sales, what caused it? Was it the interview or was it the ad boost? So it does make it. So for that reason, I do a variety of things. I, as I said, I have Facebook. I'm on Instagram. Where on Instagram I do a lot of wildlife pictures if I can get them, because my books are about that.
Right. Right.
So I do that on Instagram. I recently finished a virtual tour with a company called Partners in Crime Tours. And what they do is they provided a lot of reviews of my book by book bloggers who specialize in cozies. So these book bloggers appeal to cozy mystery readers, which my book is a cozy mystery. And they for the month of February, I had something almost every day, my book being reviewed or interviewed somewhere. So I did that. I've done giveaways on Goodreads. So, again, a variety, whatever
Yeah.
I can do. I
Yeah.
will
Well,
do.
you seem to be touching all bases. The new one is TikTok book.
I've heard of that. I've heard of that. I
Yeah,
haven't done that
that's
yet.
supposed to be very very popular now. I actually looking right now over on my desk at an article from the latest edition of Independent Book Publishers Association. They have a magazine. They're very helpful with all kinds of marketing tips and whatnot. So is their website. If you're a self-published author, you're not self-published, but self-published authors have this resource, Independent Book Publishers Association. But sometimes, even if you're, as we well know, even if you're published by a publishing company, whether it be traditional, they do not do the marketing that you would like them to do. You have to do it yourself.
Yes, a lot. My publisher is absolutely great. They do anything they can do to help, but in the end, there's a lot you have to do for yourself. I think if you're, James Patterson or a very famous writer, your publisher takes care of that, but that's at a whole different level. But for the average writer, I think they have to do most of the social media by themselves. The publisher will help. In my case, they really try and help, but you have to still do it.
Well, people don't understand, people who haven't written or haven't tried to get into this whole business don't understand agents and publicists. Nelson DeMille's best piece of advice is get an agent. Well, just try.
Yeah,
Just
that
try.
sometimes is difficult as trying to get a publisher. Yeah.
I mean, you can, and you probably will if you really stick to it. And I suggest you go into the library, look at a book that's like what you are writing. And sometimes in the acknowledgments, they'll acknowledge their agent, and all agents have a website, and you go on the website and it gives you submission guidelines. And the same is true of publicists, but I do not know anyone because I don't know any famous writers really on a personal basis, but I don't know anybody who's used a publicist who's been happy with it. It's a lot of money, and it seems like you could track down a lot of this stuff yourself, the things that they
Yeah,
do.
I don't know anybody who's used a publicist either, so I
So-
don't know. One thing I will say, in terms of agents and editors, because I met my editor, my first editor, at a conference, a mystery writer conference called Killer Nashville. And they have a lot of editors there. They have some agents there too. But you could, at this conference, have the first 10 pages of your manuscript read by an agent or an editor.
Mhm.
And I did that. And the editor, her name at that time, her name was Denny Deeps. She read it. She said, yeah, send me the first 50 pages. So when I got home, I sent them. And then she sent back and said, I like it, but it needs some changes. I want you to do this, this, and this. Will you do that? And I said, yes. And I made the changes, and I had a book contract. So it worked. And one of the advantages of this is I got directly to her. Very often, if you're sending cold, if you're getting the name of an agent or the name of an editor out of a book, you're going to send to them, but it's not going to go to them. It's going to go to their assistant, who very often is a young person out of college. And so you have to pass that step too. So one of the advantages, I think, of going to some of these conferences and networking and meeting with editors is if you can get directly to them, you have an advantage. You're not going through other steps.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a project that requires a great deal of stick-to-itiveness
Yes.
and determination and whatnot. So let's get to your writing. On a personal level, what is the best part of writing for you?
I think the initial part is the best part for me. When I first come up with the idea, when I decide what the plot's going to be about, who's going to get murdered, why, how do I plant the clues? Do I put in a red herring to distract the reader? What are my characters going to be like? I love developing characters, everything from their personality to their looks to their names. To me, picking names is a lot of fun because names, I mean, Harry Potter, you know Draco Malfoy is going to be a villain. It's just the name, the sound of the name. So I like the initial part the best when I'm first formulating what I want to do, what I want this story to be all about.
I deal with a lot of kids, and one of the questions that the kids ask is, where do you get your names from? The names of the characters. And actually, as you said, that's like the fun part.
Yeah.
Rarely, I think only one character in all of my books is a real person. I mean, the name is from a real person. All the rest, they just kind of come to me. Street signs.
I listen to names when I meet people, and I do combinations, and I look at things. I look at lists. For instance, some lists will tell you in the year, let's say 2015, the 10 most popular names for girls and the 10 most popular names for boys. And you can go far back. I can find in 1980 what the 10 most popular names were. And that gives me an idea in terms of ages sometimes to do things. But there are names that sound villainous. There are names that sound wealthy. I mean, who has old money? Catherine Winslow or Blanche Dipple. It's the name sometimes portrays some of the characters. So I love doing names.
Yeah,
And I will change,
exactly.
sometimes during the book, I will actually change it.
And the name sometimes really enables you to formulate the character.
Yes,
It's
yes.
part
It's
of
one
it.
of the first things sometimes I do is pick the name and then work on the character.
Right. So what's the worst part of writing?
Probably the last part, the edit at the end, when you, yes, I have spell check and I do that, but you still have to, but that doesn't catch everything. You still have to go line for line. I'll give you an example. As I mentioned before, once in a while, I may change a character's name. I just feel another name is better. So this happened in one of my previous books. And by chapter, I think it was chapter 4, I decided I was going to change the name. So I went back and I made sure I changed the name each time. But when I did the final edit, I noticed I missed once. Now that would never have been caught. It's not a spell check error. It's a legitimate name. It just would never have been caught. So you have to really read it again, line by line. And this time when you're reading, you have to read the punctuation, the spelling, for any sort of errors. So that's probably the part I dislike the least.
Yeah,
And
you
also,
know, with all the attention to detail that we put in these books, it's interesting. I'm reading a book now. I'm writing a review for this person, and it's a Kindle. It's on Kindle. It's an ebook, and I'm finding all of these typos.
yeah,
And no matter how hard you try, not to have these, every book has them.
yep.
Every book has them.
Sometimes
So,
I think it's a good idea to give it to somebody else to
oh
read.
yeah,
If they'll catch it. And also one thing I do, well, I do this just the book itself too. After I finish writing, I'll put it down for a couple of weeks and then I'll pick it up again.
yeah,
And I'll notice that type of mistake, but I'll also say, I don't like the way that sounds. I
exactly.
think I can be more concise, or I can change this a bit. So that's a big thing that I do.
Exactly. And the best advice, I think, is that get an editor, have an editor do your book, and then have a proofreader. I mean, you're going to proof it anyway, but
Yeah.
it's good to have a second set of eyes looking at it. And for somebody
I
who's
have a
writing,
wonderful publisher, and they do check it. I'm now, as I said, I'm now with Encircle, and they're wonderful. You know, they just are very, very good at doing
Yeah.
that. They do check. They do come up with errors and things. So
Right.
they're very good.
but for somebody who's writing their first book, it's really good for them to join a writing circle and get a critique.
Yes.
And have a few sets of eyes on what you're writing, because you haven't gotten any feedback because you haven't written anything before. So we have a few minutes left, a couple of minutes left. This is a question I like to ask authors. You've had a successful career in your life, and now you're writing books. What do you want out of this book venture? What will make you happy about that?
I'm just happy writing. I love to write. And as I mentioned before, I love animals. As a child, I started writing when I did my, a play for my Girl Scout troop. Ever since that, I was interested in writing. I love mysteries ever since I read my first Nancy Drew at age 8, and then went on to Agatha Christie a little bit as a teen. And I love animals, so it would be inevitable that I would write mysteries, and I would write about animals. And I just like people to read them. And I love it when people say, I really enjoyed that. That was a good story. Or, gee, I didn't know that about something with animal life. So I find that very satisfying, very satisfying.
I think what happens is, in your life experiences, certain people, this doesn't happen to everybody, but it happens to writers, is in your life experiences, you see an opportunity to tell a story.
Exactly.
And that story is either something that you just want to share because it's joyful, or it's sorrowful, or it's informative, or you think it's fun, or you think it'll be entertaining. And I think that's a talent that writers have, is to express something from their life experiences in a story.
Yeah.
So this has been a very interesting interview, very informative, and I'm glad you've come back. And I hope you come back again. This
I'd like
time.
to show everybody a copy of the book.
Oh, there it is. There's Playing Possum.
Possum.
Excellent.
My latest. Everybody can
Yep.
see it. And again, it's available on Amazon, on bnn.com, and through Encircle Publishing. So I love it. I just enjoy writing, and I enjoy these stories. Thank you.
You're welcome.